Welcome to this module of Introduction to Public Services, Telling the Library Story, a State of Iowa core course for the State Library Endorsement Program. My name is Becky Heil, and I am the Southeast District Consultant and a member of the Continuing Education team for the State Library. Today, we're going to be looking at marketing and advocacy for your library. On the screen is a key finding from the Pew Research Center. Our elected officials don't think we need more funding. This is why we need to be citizen advocates. You will notice they do, however, have an emotional reaction to libraries. So the question is, how do we leverage those emotional connections? We see why it's important to tell the library story, but many of us are nervous about the idea of advocacy. It can feel like you need to be a professional lobbyist, but in reality, you're probably already doing this every day. Sometimes the idea of advocacy gets confused with marketing, and when you throw in outreach, it can get even muddier. So let's take a look at the difference between advocacy and marketing. In simple terms, advocacy is about a cause, and marketing is about promoting a product or service. We can use marketing to advocate for our cause of the idea of the public library. Here is another way to think about advocacy. You want to influence decision-making in support of public libraries. That might mean appearing before a city council at budget time, or talking to the mayor when the citywide strategic plan is being made, or if they're looking at adding broadband as a city utility. So if you don't need to be a lobbyist to be an advocate, then what do you need to know? Let's answer some of those questions. First, why should you advocate? As the quote says, you want to continue to provide high-quality services to your community. Who should be doing this? Anyone is the answer. Your staff, your board, your citizens, your trustees. And where? You are probably already doing this. Advocacy can occur when you talk to your neighbor about all the cool things the library's doing, or on the sidewalk at the parade when you explain that the bulk of your funding comes from city taxes, not the state or federal government. When should you advocate? Not just at budget time. You certainly are being an advocate when you give a library presentation, but does it always need to be a formal presentation? The two pictures here represent what we call the parking lot or elevator speech. A parking lot or elevator speech is a short, off-the-cuff advocacy spiel you can share at a moment's notice whenever you get an unplanned encounter. To prepare ahead, make sure you have some stats committed to memory. Things like increases in usage, your annual circulation, your annual door count. Remember to begin such encounters in a friendly manner and be sensitive to the other person's time. And always have a quick personal story to share about the library. So as far as when to advocate, you should always be ready to tell the library's story. You will want to think through, what is the story you want to tell? And how do I make it memorable? A good story should form a connection with your target audience and with the community. You may not feel like you have much time to do advocacy in your community, so utilizing volunteers is one way to combat that lack of time. Volunteers are best used for advocacy efforts when their interests, passions, and connections are aligned to the advocacy opportunities. We will talk more about marketing later, but as I said earlier, you can advocate by using word-of-mouth marketing. Then you are not just advocating with the decision makers, but the person at the grocery store, the person sitting next to you in church, or your child's teacher. We have to use numbers to justify our existence, but we can use them in a way that brings out the wow factor. We can use graphics along with numbers to explain that the library is one of the most important ingredients in the city's batter, right up there with fire, police, and water department. Let's talk about how we can use library statistics to tell compelling stories. Stories like these. Anna likes to read to her little sister, which will encourage her to start reading on her own sooner. Walter comes to the library every day to read the newspaper. Since his wife died, it's practically the only place he wants to go. Combined with the statistical information that 40 people come through the doors of your library every day, these pictures tell a compelling story. Now let's watch this video by Jamie LaRue, librarian extraordinaire. He is a master storyteller and a master conference speaker. I'm using his message to illustrate the elements of a well-told story.
My name is Jamie LaRue of the American Library Association, and I'm here today to talk to you about how to tell a library story. And I want to begin with this idea. First, you may not feel comfortable being the one who tells the story, and that's okay. One of the most powerful ways to do this is to go out into the community and find someone who is a good speaker, already respected and not associated with the library. Go and invite that person to say, we have a script for you, and the script is available on the ALA.org website. And we want you to practice this and give it to a group of people that will arrange for you. Could be Rotary, could be a political group, could be an education group, could be a library book club. Typically, someone who's a good speaker likes to give talks. And prepared with the script, they're all set to do that. Caden was 3 years old, a very, very smart little boy. And like a lot of smart 3-year-old boys, he went through a phase where he started to stutter, not at all uncommon, and typically for boys, typically at about that age, and it's just because the brain goes faster than the tongue, it takes a while to get things synchronized. Typically, that's not a problem. You read to your children, you rhyme with them, you sing songs with them, but mostly you're just patient, and the phase passes. But Caden's father was a jerk, and every time Caden would stutter, his father would stutter with him. He would say your name again, Caden, and he would laugh. Well, this went on for 2 years, after which time the mother decided the father was abusive in other ways and she got rid of him. But by then, Caden had a problem. He stuttered badly. But Caden was so smart. He was part of the 1% of the human race who taught himself to read. His mother brought him to the library all the time. And one day, when she was at the library, Caden looked over and saw a little girl reading to a dog. The dog's name was Max. He was a retired greyhound. Retired because on his very first day, he burst out of the gate, ran down the track, saw, stopped, smelled, and watered the roses. This ended his racing career. But he was then adopted by a childless couple who then discovered Max adored children. So they had him trained as a service animal, and he came to the library where children would read to him. So the little girl gets up and walks away, and Caden grabs his book, goes over, sits down, and begins to read. And at first everything is fine, and Max looked very interested. But then Caden got stuck, and he could no longer read. And as his mother watched in anguish, and Caden got more and more frustrated, half angry, half upset, he lifted his head and stared at the dog, and Max, radiating love and patience, put out his paw and just patted Caden on the forearm. Caden took a breath, and he started again. Now, I am not saying that all of Caden's problems disappeared in that moment. But his mother was watching, and she saw that change in him. And she said, I'm going to bring him back to read to that dog. I'm going to sign him up for speech therapy classes, and we're going to beat this. Well, a couple of weeks after this, the childless couple went off to Europe for 3 weeks, and they said, Max, and they said, Caden, want to watch Max for 3 weeks? He said, yeah. So now we have Max, the best red greyhound in Colorado. And eventually, time went by, and one day the mother wrote 4 years later to the library director to say, wanted to let you know that Caden has now been cast in the lead role of The Wizard of Oz. Caden doesn't stutter anymore. Thank you, she said, for saving the life of my son. All across America, public libraries have programs where children come in and read to dogs in the library because dogs are such attentive listeners. Libraries change lives. Say it with me. Libraries change lives. Or today, as we would say as part of the library advocacy campaign, libraries transform lives. This is how we tell a library story. And let's break this down again. How does it begin? Give me a real person, not just a situation. Now we serve teenagers, we serve senior citizens, we serve children. Caden was 3 years old, specific. Then give me a problem. That's the hook of the story. Caden stutters. That's the issue, and that's what gets you emotionally invested in the story. Then introduce library as supporting character, not the main character. Library, what do we do to intervene, to assist with this? We have a program where you come and you read to dogs. And then give me one fact to ground the story. So I know you're not just making it up. And if I say, many, many libraries around the country provide programs for dogs, I say, yeah, okay, that's reasonable. I believe that. And the last thing is, as a preacher friend of mine used to say, give them the phrase that pays. Give them a short, succinct, memorable phrase that will carry that message home. And so note again that this is the process through which we don't just keep people entertained, we're establishing a message of value, and we're doing it in a way that changes people's minds, not by pummeling them with facts, which is the library tendency. Come in and say, here's all of the information, and once you know the information, you'll change your mind. Information doesn't change people's minds. Stories do. And so if I start with an emotional connection and give you one fact at the end and one phrase that pays, this has been demonstrated by brain research to work. And that's how you tell a library story.
I hope you enjoyed that little interlude by Jamie. I have had the privilege to listen to him in person, and he truly is a remarkable storyteller. On the screen now is an exact quote from the 2008 OCLC Geek the Library report, which was titled From Awareness to Funding, a Study of Library Support in America. Perceptions of the librarian are highly related to support. Passionate librarians who are involved in the community make a difference. Since we know that people's support for libraries is related to the passion they perceive librarians feel for their library, let people know that you're passionate about the library and the value it brings to your community. Finally, remember that advocacy is something we should be doing every day on behalf of our libraries, inside its walls and out. Be the voice for your library within the relationships you hold in your city, town, community, and at the state and federal levels when appropriate. Let's move into what goes into a good marketing plan. I'd like to thank Emily Bainter, Communications Specialist with the State Library, for this next series of slides. I decided since she was the marketing expert, her information and experience would be far superior to mine. Marketing is the activity, set of institutions, and processes for creating, communicating, delivering, and exchanging offerings that have value for customers, clients, partners, and society at large. The important word here is value. Successful marketing happens when you know who your users are and understand what they value. Why should we care about marketing the library if it's free to the public? There are a few good reasons. Marketing builds awareness of the library and how it benefits the community. Marketing helps engage your users and strengthen your relationships with them. And of course, marketing helps drive the use of the library resources, which should justify your funding and help make the case for additional funding when needed. Who do we market to? One key marketing term is target audience. A target audience is a group of people with similar demographics, behaviors, and/or values. Defining target audiences helps marketing efforts be more efficient. Thinking with your target audience in mind will make your marketing efforts more successful. It's important to take a look at the makeup of your community and understand their needs as you go to market library services. Target audiences for your library may include families with young children, retired seniors, job seekers, or new immigrants or refugees. One important concept when we think of our users or customers is the marketing funnel. The marketing funnel is a well-established model that visualizes a customer moving through the different stages of the marketing journey as they learn about and engage with your organization. For libraries, users start out at the top of the funnel with a basic awareness of what the library offers. As they learn more, may become interested in the library's offerings. This can then lead them to considering and intending to use the library, ultimately converting them into users by stopping in to visit, signing up for a library card, using the Wi-Fi or public computers, borrowing physical or digital materials, or using an online resource. The culmination of the marketing funnel is the customer becoming an advocate for the library. Notice that the model is a funnel, not a cylinder. As customers move down the funnel stages, more engagement happens and a stronger relationship forms. However, this means that fewer people move through each stage, and only a small number that start at the top of the funnel will eventually become an advocate. Customers can move up and down in the stages of the funnel and also fall off the funnel at any time. Where does marketing happen? Professional marketers would say everywhere, but here are some of the most common places where marketing happens. Digital marketing has become one of the most popular ways to market. Digital marketing simply means using the internet for marketing efforts. It can be a free or low-cost way to reach a large number of people. But keep in mind your target audience. Do they have internet access and use it? You may need to supplement with more traditional marketing. Traditional marketing can be expensive, but it doesn't necessarily mean having to pay to advertise. Your library could appear in the weekly paper by having a program featured in an article. A director could be interviewed on the local radio show about the book discussion group's current read and how to join. These types of free advertising rely on good relationships with local reporters. Be encouraged to reach out and initiate a conversation. The gold standard of marketing happens by word of mouth. Unlike digital and traditional marketing, we really don't have much control with word of mouth, but it can carry much more weight because there's trust involved when someone provides a recommendation to a friend or family member. How do we figure out what, who, and where to market library services or resources? A marketing plan is a way to strategize your marketing efforts. There are many templates and examples online, but a simple marketing plan will include a situation analysis. This is a description or overview of the resource or service and the current situation. It might be helpful to conduct a SWOT analysis: strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. It will also include a target audience. Define the people you are trying to reach. This could include age, gender, education level, interests, etc. What are their values or motivations? You'll also want to include goals in your marketing plan. Use SMART goals that are specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time-based. Think about your strategies and tactics. This will contain the bulk of the information in the plan. Think of your target audience and where they spend their time and get their information. Adjust your tactics to fit. What key messages or phrases will you use to reach your audience? What's the best way to reach them? Social media? Direct mail postcards? This section can also include a timeline of your efforts and a plan for follow-up and a measurement to determine if goals were met. And the last piece will be resource allocation or budget. How much can we invest in this effort? Remember, this may or may not include actual dollars. How much staff time will this take? And who will be responsible for what? I'd like to finish up this module with this really interesting video about a campaign that happened in Troy, Michigan. I hope this campaign makes you think a little differently about advocacy and marketing.
There once was a library, a beautiful, busy, award-winning library. Unfortunately, times were hard. The city of Troy, Michigan no longer had enough money for its library, so it scheduled a vote asking the townspeople to approve a small tax increase. This angered an anti-tax group known as the Tea Party. Well organized and well funded, they started posting "Vote No" signs, mailing flyers, and making noise. They dominated the conversation, changing the topic from library, books, and reading to taxes, taxes, taxes. With no money and an election less than a month away, the library needed help. They needed something attention-getting, audacious, maybe even vile. So we decided to form a group of our own and started planting signs around town that said, "Vote to close the library August 2nd, book burning party August 5th. The idea of book burning is bad enough, but gleefully making it a party, well, that angered people enough to send them to our Facebook page.
You people are sick. This is disgusting. Reject the wackos. Vote yes.
But we didn't stop there. We created videos.
Imagine this times 200,000. How cool is that?
Posted on Twitter.
The Troy Library might be short on money, but it has books to burn.
Created items for sale.
A book bag. How ironic.
We placed newspaper ads, created check-ins, posted flyers, and lined up entertainment.
You guys are booking a band?
People became enraged.
Why would you burn books, idiots?
This is horrible.
Cheap imbeciles.
What the is this world coming
We
to?
should burn your signs instead.
Complete and total
This
idiots.
is really
Shut this
just
bitch down.
pathetic.
Jerks.
They posted their own links, shared with friends, debated the merits of libraries and the audacity of burning books. The conversation spread from Facebook to city council meetings, from newspapers to TV. It grew from local to national, even international news. Once it reached a fevered pitch, we revealed the true intent of our campaign. A vote against the library is like a vote to burn books. And people started posting, tweeting, and reporting all over again. In the end, we had changed the conversation completely, from taxes, 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 to library, library, library. And on August 2nd, the yes voters, voters who don't normally turn out to vote, turned out at levels 342% greater than projected. And the library won by a landslide. The town's library, its beautiful, award-winning library, had been saved. Not every story at the library has a happy ending. Fortunately, this one did.
While that may not be a typical way to market for your library, it certainly was effective. This concludes the Telling the Library Story module of the Core Endorsement course, Introduction to Public Services. Don't forget, you can always call your district consultant for more information about this topic, or watch some of our other webinars from the Iowa Learns catalog. Thanks for watching.